Hey everyone, my name is Benati. Welcome to In Conversation, the show where we, as the great University of Johannesburg, have conversations around topics that are of interest to us. Today, we are in conversation with students from the Faculty of Law, and we will be discussing the modern-day role of commissions of inquiry. We will be assessing the effectiveness of the Madlanga Commission and whether commissions of inquiry are still a useful tool for justice and accountability, or whether they have become an expensive waste of public resources. Let's get started by having our guests introduce themselves. On my right, we have...
Hey everyone, my name is Nkosikhona and I am a third-year LLB student and a law library tutor at the University of Johannesburg. Today, I will be representing the Law Clinic and the UJ Faculty of Law in a wonderful discussion with some of the brilliant minds here, and I'm very much excited to be here today.
Hi everyone, my name is Andiswa. I'm a third-year LLB student from the University of Johannesburg, and I'll be representing the UJ Law Clinic and the Faculty of Law.
Hi everyone, my name is Nathan Tawonga. I am a second-year law student at the University of Johannesburg, and I'm representing both the Faculty of Law and the UJ Law Clinic.
Hi everyone, I'm Elihle, and I am a first-year LLB student. I represent the Faculty of Law at UJ as well as the Law Clinic.
Hello everyone, my name is Ginger Jarvis. I'm a third-year LLB student, and today I'll be representing the UJ Faculty of Law as well as the Legal Law Clinic.
Let's get the conversation started by having Elihle explain to us what a commission of inquiry is.
Yes, so given effect to by Section 84(2)(f) of the Constitution, as well as the Commissions Act, a commission of inquiry is a formal investigative institution that is appointed by the president, and it is in exceptional circumstances where this is done. It operates kind of as like an accountability tool to try and aid in solving a wide range of very potent issues involving senior officials and also some issues such as corruption, police misconduct, and governmental failures. It's not a court, but it gathers evidence and facts by calling upon witnesses and questioning them in front of the public. And the goal is to help the government find the root cause of the major issue and try to fix it. And in that regard, at the end of the day, recommendations are made by the Commission, and it is up to the government to act or implement them.
Thank you so much, Elihle. I want to turn to Mzelemu. Can you explain to us specifically what the Madlanga Commission is and what that entails?
Thank you for allowing me, for giving me the opportunity to introduce such a big aspect that is currently happening in our country. You know, guys, all I can literally say is explosive allegations were made by General Nkosikhona against some big members of the cabinet, alleging that they were making or having political interference with police functions. So one of the allegations made by General Nkosikhona is that they are drug cartels who sort of run the criminal justice system, who have a sway way of not being arrested, who have sort of that smooth way of just escaping the system and rotting the country to the core. You know, after those allegations, we are all at the edge of our seat, calling for the removal of the people who are implicated, calling for the president to act, you know. And at the time, the president was not in the country. So when he came back, he came and established what put us here today, the Commission of Inquiry, the Madlanga Commission. So this Madlanga Commission is empowered to make an interim report within 3 months and then deliver its final report in 6 months. With its mandate, primary mandate, it is to make findings of possible political interference within the criminal justice system. You really need to understand, if I say the criminal justice system, I mean from the police in the police station to the highest court in the country, the constitutional court, because that is what he's basically alleging. It is very important that I highlight how big what we're dealing with is, because the word that is used here is not that the police or the NPA per se, but the whole criminal justice system. And if you check, the criminal justice system as a whole encompasses from police stations until the highest court, including all your metropolis, including your NPA, including the magistrate court, including the judges in the high court. So this is basically an inquiry into the whole criminal justice system as a whole. So when the president made or established the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, there was also an outcry. Some people said, oh, we know there's no commission, it wasn't effective. Some people saying, oh, but this is the only possible democratic way that this problem can be solved. There is no other institution that can literally conduct such a big, huge investigation into the criminal justice system besides a Judicial Commission of Inquiry. So it would be very interesting that today we actually dialogue this issue together to see whether what's the best decision taken by the president. Will this commission actually give us what we're looking for? So I'm looking forward to that conversations with my colleagues and possibly see where they're falling short. And yeah.
Thank you so much to our two guests for explaining what commissions of inquiries are and explaining what especially the Madlanga Commission is. So, from what I understand, Andiswa, you are for commissions of inquiry. Can you explain and give a brief opening statement as to why that is?
Thank you very much for such an opportunity. As me and Mr. Mzele were supporting the effectiveness of commissions of inquiry, and we state that there are effective views and they still need to be taken into consideration. As we know that we live in a constitutional democracy that is founded on constitutional values, we found that knowing the truth or being exposed to the truth, it's not something that is of a luxury, but it's something that is necessary in this country, considering the fact that we have aspects of corruption, political interference, which are posing as a threat to the constitutional democracy or to our democracy. In that aspect, commissions of inquiry are mechanisms that are necessary to reveal the truth with things that are threatening our constitutional values or our democracy. As the opposition might argue that commissions of inquiry are the most expensive and most empty gestures that have no effect, we also need to take into consideration their intended purpose. What were commissions of inquiry actually enacted for? What were they created for? So, commissions of inquiry are mechanisms that are grounded on the rule of law, aiming to investigate, advise the president, and also expose the government's inaction, and also aiming to confront the systematic failures that are occurring within our governmental institutions. In addition, we submit that commissions of inquiry represent something far more from profound. They're aiming to ensure transparency and accountability within the government institutions. So, commissions of inquiry, as I've stated by my other colleagues, there are public hearings that have revealed certain information with the other commissions of inquiry that we have had previously. They aim to reveal certain information which we would have not had any idea of or would have remained in closed doors had we had not had any commissions of inquiry, which is why we say that commissions of inquiry are still useful and they should still be upheld and considered in this constitutional democracy.
Thank you so much, Andiswa. The points you made were really insightful. We want to hear from Ginger. Ginger, from what I understand, you are against commissions of inquiry, and I am interested to know why.
I'm also in opposition of Commission of Inquiry in the sense that we're critiquing its purpose and its mandate and its outcome. So commissions of inquiry are promulgated as investigative bodies into matters of very big public importance and matters to the benefit of the public. However, the opposition critiques them as expensive, delayed, and ultimately non-binding institutions that just merely advise executive authorities and grant the appearance of justice but allow them to evade consequence, and therefore true ethical failure persists. The idealist vision of a commission of inquiry. I understand that my opposition here promulgates it and emphasizes it as a true tool to combat corruption and ethical failures within our institution and within our country, within our governance and administration. However, in practice, this mechanism is often met with skepticism and inefficiency in the way that it conducts itself. Commissions are investigative bodies. like we have said and like my parties have stated, there is a mandate. They have specific mandates for what they are intended to do. They investigate matters of public interest, provide information, and make it available to public knowledge, as well as establish reports and recommendation at the end towards these matters, as well as solving and granting answers towards executive authorities on the matters they're mandated on. However, their reports are often met with delayed implementation. There are often disproportionate consequences and outcomes to the resources used in facilitating their conduct and their activities. And thus we see them as seemingly inadequate. Not that they are not a tool in what they've been mandated for. They have very good outcome in their investigative powers. However, how is it their investigative powers create sources and reports and recommendations that are not implemented and taken into regard? It is thus we create our most fundamental contention in this matter. Commissions are expensive advisory institutions that exploit resources, and without the cooperation of administrative bodies or executive authority, they create a means for perpetrators to evade real consequences. Examples of this are, without state organs such as the National Prosecuting Authority choosing to act and taking recommendations from commissions of inquiry, their recommendations have little to no value. This is where the system in of itself collapses. Its slow implementation of its recommendation, its time delaying circumstances that are very tedious, the lack of urgency, the lack of authority, wasteful resources, all of this leads to the deterioration of the mechanism itself. What could be a very great source to find answers and investigate matters becomes a mechanism that lacks legitimacy and trust from other people within our society, within our democracy. In conclusion, our opposition wants to champion a commission of inquiry as this great institution in its investigative authority. However, this institution is merely advisory in its nature, and its reports are often put on delay and put matters on hold. We assert that until commissions possess a certain mandatory recommendation in their requirements and in their findings, that they remain a symbolic gesture and fail to meet the people's demands of justice and ethical governance and accountability.
Thank you, Ginger, for your informative and opposing perspective. I am now going to let our guests share their opinions regarding commissions of inquiry in general and the Madlanga Commission in specific. Back to you, Ginger. Could you please start us off?
Thank you so much. I will be discussing the legal aspects of a commission of inquiry. Like my panelists have said, a commission of inquiry is an investigative body. It can be promulgated and created by the President of South Africa or other parties. It doesn't lie its importance and its functions in who is party of the commission of inquiry, but its importance lies in the fact of why it was mandated and what applies to the commission itself. When appointed by the South African President, and if he applies the commission in terms of the Constitution, Section 84, the importance of commission doesn't lie in who is party of the commission itself. It lies in why it was mandated and what legal powers it has in terms of it being appointed by the President of South Africa himself or not. When the Commission of Inquiry is appointed by the South African President in terms of his promulgated power in the Constitution of South Africa, Section 84, and when he applies the Commission Act of 1947, this grants it special powers. This grants it a certain legal teeth in the way that it conducts its research and investigating powers on certain matters of public interest. It is in this matter that it differentiates from commissions of inquiry in the general standard. Now, This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of our conversation and why I think that it is more of an expensive resource to evade real persecution and real responsibility of perpetrators instead of this tool that could actually provide for justice and change and reform. Because when investigative powers such as a commission of inquiry deduct their research, create findings, and create their reports, it is often taken into a consideration. They are merely advisory in nature, even if they have been appointed by the president or they have been appointed by another party. They are still advisory in nature. The only difference is one appointed by a party is granted, like I said, more legal teeth. More legal teeth means that in their investigative power, they can compel witnesses to come forward they can compel witnesses to come forward with information. They can fine witnesses for obstruction or defeating the ends of justice, for withholding information, even not appearing. This creates depths within their investigation, no? It creates depths within the information that they've made public, known to public. However, that is not what we're contesting today. Commissions of inquiry are very prominent and very crucial in the way that they provide the public with public knowledge of things and information that they should be aware of. It makes it very clear, it is very transparent, it is made widely known. However, their consequence is not proportionate to all the resources that are put into creating these commissions, in facilitating their conduct. We see millions used to facilitate the conduct of commissions of inquiry. However, in those millions, what are the consequences that are given? Yes, their mandates are only to an extent. They are advisory in nature. However, what does that mean to have such a very expensive institution give advisory proceedings, give just advisory pursuits to our executive authorities, but it is not answered, it is not implemented? Does that not mean we delay processes? Does that not mean we delay justice? Does that not mean we allow for even the elitists of this country to evade certain accountability at the time? We saw with the Zondo Commission itself. This was promulgated and appointed by our president, meaning they did get legal teeth and certain legal powers in compelling former President Jacob Zuma in his to compel him to come forward with evidence. However, he had not come forward, and this led to a public outroar and a public outcry. So how is it that when we suggest that we give a mandate to a certain inquiry and a certain institution to get information, and we even give them their legal teeth and their legal mandate and authority to compel witnesses, bring witnesses forward, but there is legal outcry. There is outcry. There is still dissatisfaction with the way that they are conducting themselves. Does that not mean still they are expensive institutions that do not grant for crucial and significant change and consequence and persecution? Within the Zondo Commission also, 10 billion rand was ascertained. 10 billion rand was ascertained in their proceedings. However, it is estimated by the EWN that around 500 billion could be the true estimation of what state capture meant of the resources lost in South African economy.
Andiswa, I noticed that you had something to say, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that.
Okay, so you've stated that commissions of inquiry delay action, and it actually affords these individuals an opportunity to evade liability. So my question to you is, how would that be different if we did not have commissions of inquiry? Because from what I'm trying to say is that commissions of inquiry are intended to expose people who are committing these illegal doings. So if we cancel commissions of inquiry, there wouldn't be exposure. in that aspect, there's also no form of accountability. So my question is, are we willing to have this argument that it is costly at the expense of having a country that is even more corrupt than it is corrupt right now? That's my question to you.
And if I may just strengthen up that question a bit, you know, we must not mischaracterize courts and commissions. In courts, we persecute individuals. In commissions, we investigate organizations. So if you say that we should have went through the prosecution rules, how would you take, let's look at SAPS. How would you take SAPS as an organization to court, investigated in court?
Thank you for these questions, and I think they're very important. I think one thing for sure is that I would like to emphasize that the importance of commissions of inquiry within our democratic society is without saying. It gives us an opportunity as the public to be made known of certain instances, organizations and institutions that contribute to corruption, to ethical and governance and administrative failures. They are important in their investigative pursuits. However, my critique lies in the fact that they are still advisory in nature. They are an expensive institution that is advisory in nature, and their recommendations are of little value if there is no collaboration from the institutions themselves that they are investigating. My argument is that within their investigation and creating their findings and reports, they need the cooperation of executive and administrative bodies to fully realize what they have investigated. Therefore, does that not mean they are still an expensive investigative institution that creates a delay if we do not make it mandatory, in a sense, to take in their recommendations? How is it that we allow such slow and tedious implementation of their recommendation? An example of this is the TRC. The TRC created a very fundamental change within the South African context. It was our segue from the apartheid era to an apartheid era to an era of forgiveness, of truth and transparency and democracy. We needed to know the full amount of the violence and atrocities committed. But we see now, in 2025, nearly 20 years after this initial TRC was established, that there is another commission investigating that commission and its outcomes and its persecutions. That is an expensive use of government resources. We cannot have information always available to us, but never implemented, never taken into regard. That is my point, that they are very important in the way that they function. Their investigative powers have proven to be crucial. But what does it mean if their recommendation and all of this information is made clear to us, but we do not implement it? We do not take in these implementations. We do not hold government and executive authorities accountable.
Zelemu, it seems like you have something to say.
Indeed, I'm very worried by what has been said. A lot has been said, most of it true, most of it questionable. Some I don't agree. Firstly, if you are going to question the teeth of the commission, you really need to go first on their functions and the powers that they have. You know, they are empowered, like we have all agreed, reach common ground that they're empowered to investigate, make findings, make a recommendation. They did that. Whether the investigation outcomes are enforced at the end is really not a commission problem per se. You're shooting the wrong guy. You are scared of the executive and gone for the commission, in my view. You know? So that's one of the things that I simply don't agree with it. Commissions of inquiry are okay, firstly, let me say, the inclusion of commissions of inquiry in the Constitution is for a valid reason or a purpose that is sought to be achieved by the Constitution, you'll understand that the Constitution protects rights, gives rights, and does a lot of things. But at the same time, it needs to protect the democracy. It needs to protect the rights themselves. And that's why commissions of inquiry are there as an option. Because there are simply some of the investigations that cannot be done by court. Such as these ones. You find that you have to investigate SEPs. You have to investigate the NPA themselves. You are saying that you are guilty, my guy. Please investigate yourself and find yourself guilty. It's really inconceivable in my view. So, with that said, you want to ask me a question?
Nathan would like to interject, so I want to give him the opportunity to do that.
Yes, you're saying that if we don't have commissions of inquiry, then a matter like this, where there are allegations of the criminal justice being captured, you're saying that we can't expose that through a court of law. But I disagree with that. With a commission of inquiry, we can't carry out a proper investigation. Police are there to carry out those criminal investigations. But with the commission of inquiry, we're running away from the matter and we're just delaying the process.
Okay, interesting. But I think you are literally on my side. Reason being, I'm saying you are guilty, Nathan. And I'm saying investigate yourself and find yourself guilty. Or make a recommendation whether you're guilty. You are being alleged to have committed an offense. As Lieutenant General Nkosikhona has said, there's infiltration throughout the criminal justice system. But we still expect the same system. So let me explain it this way. In every incident that we have found a commission of inquiry established, human rights violations or democracy has been a threat. You find with the Zondo Commission at first, state capture. If you have a state that is captured, it's endangering the democracy of that country. That's when the Judicial Commission, the Zondo Commission, came in and acted as a barrier, a protective barrier to say, okay, we are investigating states, the states itself, state capture. You can't then now say, okay, there's state capture, let's go to court. Who are you investigating in court? Who are you charging in court? Because we are investigating the institution, not a specific individual, but the institution itself. Because within the institution, there might be so many crooks and criminals that we need to find. We need to find deals that have happened that are unlawful. And we need to investigate the body, not just specific individuals. And then after that, we make findings to say, okay, we have to establish that Nkosikhona in this instance was the one who made this unlawful deal and this unlawful deal. And then from there we say, okay, make recommendations, prosecute this person. The Commission of Inquiry at the end of the day did its job. It did make a recommendation. Whether it was enforced later or not, it's a concern, yes. But it cannot be attributed to say, it's your problem, commissions of inquiry, you don't have teeth. No, go to the person who's supposed to enforce these commissions of inquiry recommendations.
Nathan, let's hear from you.
But what you're saying then is that we should erode the functions of a court. You're saying that if we have a problem, we should not go to court. Instead, we should deal with that matter in a commission of inquiry. But what the problem then is that these commissions of inquiry, and there's a case by Minister of Police versus Premier, it says that these commissions of inquiry, together with the functions that you guys have discussed, they also are there to serve the public, and these give effect to public opinion. But we know from the Constitutional Court's case in Makwanyane, the court said that public opinion is not the fundamental, it's not the manner in which decisions should be made, because then we're returning to a state of parliamentary sovereignty, and the public then is ruling the state, and the rule of law is defeated. Constitutional supremacy is defeated. So these commissions of inquiry, they should not take the place of the court.
Okay. It's a good point, but still I'm not correct. May I just ask you a question? So if in this instance we are not to establish a commission of inquiry, whom were you going to take to court? Based on what? Based on what?
You also asked her the same question. How do we take subs to the court?
Exactly.
I think that's the same question you're asking right now. The same manner in which if a state servant who is a police official, yes, commits a crime, who do we take to court? The Minister of Police. It's not every single person within that branch of government that has committed the crime. Yes, there's infiltration, but the court is there to serve a purpose, to find out where exactly is that infiltration. And the reason why we should go to court is because courts are there and they are impartial. Commissions of inquiry are not impartial. They're set up by the president, and the president comes from a certain political party, and those commissions have individuals who might come from a certain political party. Who's to say that they are going to be impartial? The same manner in which a court would be impartial. Courts are held to a high value and high esteem. Commissions of inquiry are the general public, you know.
But we also need to take into account the fact that commissions of inquiry are a bit more flexible as compared to how ordinary courts are. Let's say, for example, with the aspect of the fact that there are certain evidentiary material that cannot be laid in ordinary courts of law that can be laid in commissions of inquiry, for example, evidence which is generally inadmissible in courts but in commissions of inquiry is laid. So my question to you is, wouldn't it be an issue if, for example, certain evidentiary material that you see that it is of certain importance, of specific importance, being disregarded in an ordinary court, but then it can be upheld in a commission of inquiry for ensuring that a person is actually held accountable? Because it's more like, in that aspect, it will be affording protection per se in a specific way to that individual than how it will have been done in a commission of inquiry. So what's your view on that?
My view with that is that the reason why there are stringent or rather strict rules regarding the admissibility or inadmissibility of evidence in court is that not only are we there to restore justice or to serve the desires of the victim, but even the perpetrator themselves, they are afforded due process rights. And that is the approach that we follow in South Africa. So evidence has to have limits in the regarding whether it's admissible or inadmissible. Not every single evidence should be admissible in court. But now with commissions of inquiry, what are we achieving if evidence is flexible like that?
Thank you guys so much for your points. They were very interesting and engaging. Nathan, I heard you mention something about the president and his political affiliations and how they affect the commissions of inquiry. Can you get more into that and explain more?
So generally, whenever a commission of inquiry is being set up, it's the president or the head of state that sets up the inquiry. Or in the case of when we're looking at it from a provincial aspect, it's the premier. But in this case, the Madlanga Commission, as stated by my brother there, was set up by the president. And now that creates a problem because then we see how commissions of inquiry like this Madlanga Commission, they are there to serve political goals and they are politically motivated. And they allow political parties to play a game of fault, like establishing who is at fault and who is not at fault, deviating from the main problem, which is corruption, and which is the state capture, or in this matter with the Madlanga Commission, which is the criminal justice system being infiltrated. And another big problem with this is that it creates an opportunity to scapegoat other political opponents. And because the commissions are set up by the president, I stated earlier on that who's to say that these commissions will be impartial? These commissions are set up by people, or they include people who come from different political parties, whereas in a court, you do not come from a political party. We have seen that certain people who had political motives or who made political posts, they were banned or they were barred and prohibited from joining the Judicial Commission. And that is why the court is the manner in which investigations should be carried out in, rather than the commissions of inquiry.
Let's hear what our brother has to say.
Interesting point, but how do you solve corruption when you have not identified who is at the wrong? Because that's what the whole point of an investigation is, to identify the wrongdoers and then hold someone accountable. Well, I clearly disagree with your politically motivated of commissions, simply because, number one, in the Zondo Commission, the main role player was President Zuma. Number two, even Cyril Ramaphosa was one of the people who were recommended to be investigated by the commission itself. In this commission we have, the person who's at the forefront of being alleged to be the mastermind is the previous, or it's the currently suspended Minister of Police who's the same ANC member. So I clearly don't understand how politically motivated it will be, because it's there to conduct an investigation on these individuals and then make recommendations. Maybe you can take me into confidence, because as of now, I'm really not convinced.
My brother, you did state just now that this police minister that has been suspended is from an ANC political party. And you see, the problem with this now is that when we have commissions of inquiry, we're avoiding the normal police investigative process. And by avoiding the normal investigative police process, we know that these recommendations are not going to be binding. So let us have a commission of inquiry so that this Minister of Police is not going to be arrested, and therefore our political party still stands. And that is the position with which commissions of inquiry come in.
Wow, interesting. It feels like you killed me.
Okay.
You killed me.
Can we get into a different point? I want to hear from Elihle what you think about the media aspect and how media shapes and informs public opinion when it comes to commissions of inquiry.
Okay, first of all, I think we haven't heard enough about the costs of this commission. It being 147.8 million rand just for the 6 months. The Zondo Commission was just above 1 billion rand over a period of 4 years. And with the 1,400 people who were implicated, only 38 arrests were made. And can I just put this into context? In this year, just 2 months ago, 441 million rand was allocated to the National Dialogue. Looking at how much money we've already spent, allocating so much money to something where people don't even see the need for, or people see a lack of enforcement of, it seems like it doesn't make sense to attribute that much money to that. And yes, although you can say the principle of democracy is being heard through commissions, what we need to understand is also the people that it is trying to serve. People see commissions as the face of enforcement. So if they see something wrong with the enforcement, they attribute that blame to the face of the enforcement, which is the commission. Spending so much money on the face of democracy, where it seems like it's not yielding any produce, any fruits, it makes people doubt in the law enforcement system. It makes people doubt the judicial system. The Health Sciences Research Council even pointed out that with concerns to the Zondo Commission specifically, they were concerns about the guiltiness of state capture and the people who were implicated not being accountable, held accountable or arrested. And also that there was a lack of implementation of the Commission's recommendations. A number of commissions that have happened, for example, the Madlanga Commission, where the current president was also implicated, but we saw none of those results having come in. 6 of the people who were implicated, including the former Northwest Deputy Police Commissioner, were just last year acquitted. What is the use of these recommendations if, when they are implemented, they're changed or they're delayed whenever they're made?
Andiswa, you seem to have something to add to that.
Yes, I have a question. Since you stated that commissions of inquiry, the people perceive them as mechanisms that are of no use and that they're doubtful of them, wouldn't they be at more doubt if we say we remove commissions of inquiry and no action is actually taken at all with matters that are detrimental to this democracy in a specific way? Because from what I'm thinking, the public will be more of an opinion that the government is not willing to take action on matters that are affecting us. Yeah, in that aspect, wouldn't the public also be of the view that also be doubtful of the government's willingness to take into consideration matters that are affecting them? Because if we remove them, the public will be more of the opinion that the government is not willing to take action on matters that are affecting us, so the government is not caring for us in a specific way possible.
I think that regardless of whether a commission was appointed or not, the government would have been forced to do something about the allegations because of the public way in which the allegations were brought out. If the general had brought out all of these allegations and nothing has been done, surely a public outcry would have happened by now, because these allegations have been made public, and the scale and the gravity of these allegations prompted work from the government to enforce. And so, regardless of whether there was a commission or not, so let's say we take the route of there not having been a commission, natural investigative procedures would have been taken in order to investigate those alleged allegations. So attributing more money to something that can already be done through institutions that we already have, it doesn't make sense to attribute so much extra money in where we are in a state of so many things going on in the country, on top of the corruption, the poverty, and there's just so many other things where we can attribute that money to. Attributing to something that seems redundant and almost wasteful doesn't make sense. So,
Excuse me.
Okay.
Ginger, you seemed to want to add.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
For my opposition, the importance of a commission of inquiry, you have stated, we would like a third-party investigative mechanism in terms of inquiring this information, in terms of really identifying state players. However, do you not see the fact that there should be a direct correlation between the information you are given and the way that it proceeds into actual consequences and outcome? How is it we can have all the information in the world, but what does it mean if we then choose? Remember, this is an advisory mechanism. It is advisory in nature. So all that information, just to be able to choose to take it into consideration, does that not mean that it is wasteful? Does that not mean it is harmful for what we are trying to perpetuate, what we are trying to accomplish in terms of answers? Information can only take us so far if we are not willing to take into its recommendations. Like my colleague has said, there is a disproportionate amount of resources put into facilitating commissions of inquiry with such little consequence and such little outcome in what they've achieved for us.
Let's let them answer and hear their thoughts, and then we'll talk to Nathan after.
Okay, but my argument is, wouldn't it be a bit unrealistic, like what my colleague has stated, to expect commissions of inquiry to perform functions that were intended to be performed by the president, which is implemented? Because already, commissions of inquiry have done what they've enacted to do. They provide recommendations. So wouldn't it be a bit unreasonable to expect them to do something that goes beyond the scope of their authority? And also, if we're going to make an argument that commissions of inquiry are costly, are we necessarily willing to have a country, or to argue this argument that it is costly at the expense of having a country that is already battling corruption, that is already battling these systematic failures just because of the fact that they're expensive, and all those things? And also, taking into consideration the Zondo Commission, if we had not had this commission, we wouldn't have any idea that there is state capture that is happening at an extensive level within this country. Also, in relation to the Madlanga Commission, if we hadn't had commissions of inquiry, the public would have still been on the dark. They would have had not known that there are people that are committing corruption within these corrupt officials, and also this other aspect of the fact that there are funds that are being stolen from the government, like for example what happened in the 2 billion Tembisa Hospital massacre issue. So my question to you guys is it reasonable to say that we're focusing on costs at the expense of something that is affecting the country as a whole, or that is affecting our democracy in a specific way? Because these are matters of public concern. They're a threat to our democracy in a specific way.
Well, Nathan, let's hear from you.
My sister mentioned that the existence of the Commission of Inquiry, the Madlanga Commission, is the reason why we know about these allegations of criminal justice system being infiltrated. But I'd like to correct that. The reason why we know that there is corruption within the criminal justice system is because General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi made these allegations publicly. It was not through the commissions of inquiry. So just to refute that point, but also to strengthen my sister's point and refute your other claims, it's not realistic to have a commission of inquiry carry out these investigations. It almost defeats the purpose of separation of powers. The commissions of inquiry are just an extension of the executive, and when commissions of inquiry carry out these criminal allegations, not much results are yielded, because it's the same executive that is carrying out this corruption, and that is the reason why courts are better suited.
I would like to interject quickly just before you make your point. To strengthen his case, we do have due process in courts in order to enforce these matters, in order to really investigate and create consequences onto these matters. Like I've said, information is given to us by our Commission of Inquiry, and you as my opposition have clearly identified that you feel that these commissions give us information that we wouldn't have been aware of beforehand. However, that is indeed the process and the purpose of our courts. Furthermore, there are other institutions, there are other civil societies within our South African democracy, like you tend to repeat. Our South African democracy is represented by a Commission of Inquiry, but there are non-profit organizations. There are other institutions that seek to propel the interests of the public. We have interests like gender-based violence. We have interests like poverty and equality that are spoken out on a daily basis, researched by these independent authorities without funding, mind you, to create answers and to give us this information, the same information that, yes, we've repeated, takes so much money for a Commission of Inquiry to find. Therefore, we interject to say that this is an expensive institution in which does not propel its purpose, however, could be used in many other different manners and schemes other than to gain ways to evade actual consequences on the side of the perpetrator.
Let's hear a final rebuttal from the guests on my right.
At this last lap, we really need to contextualize it to the Madlanga Commission and not have it so much open-ended. That eliminates then the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. What would have happened? You know, one of the statements made by General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is the reason that he went to a press conference is because there was no other way. In fact, all the means at that point in time, they were exhausted. He was going on a public outcry. And in my view, if this Commission of Inquiry was not established, we were going to find ourselves in a position where people like General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi might want, with private security companies, might want to actually take these things to their own hands, to say, let it decay, because there is nothing that they could literally do at that point in time. Do you understand? So, going on the media was the last resort. And that last resort has brought us into a Commission of Inquiry that will make investigations into these findings. And we must also understand that the principle of ad alteram partem is very important. Once the allegations are made, they have to be investigated, which is why we are here. Like I've said, at the backdrop of everything is democracy, because you don't want to find yourself, imagine, like you said, there would have been a way to respond to the allegations. Strikes, how many buildings are going to be banned for us wanting action? How many things that could have happened, people angry that nothing is being done. Right now, a Commission of Inquiry brings hope within us that, okay, we are looking forward to something. We are chasing this 6 months down the line to say, we hope to see what this Commission of Inquiry will find. And at the end, we're expecting result, you know? So those points that there's something that could have been done, for me, really don't stand. Nothing could have been done. The Commission of Inquiry was truly the only way, the most democratic way that would have supported the parties who are allegedly committed these offenses, but also take strike against crime. You know, there's a proper balance. Our Section 35 due process rights, in those instances, they are properly balanced between the parties.
Thank you so much to our guests for sharing their insights and their very powerful opinions. As we've heard, one side of our table is for the implementation of commissions of inquiry and believes that they are essential to our democracy and essential in achieving justice and accountability. And the other side of our table is in opposition of the implementation of commissions of inquiry, believing that they are merely advisory, do not lead to any real punishment of powerful officials who have committed wrongdoing, and that they are merely just an expensive waste of public resources. So now we pose the question to you, our audience. What do you think? Do you think commissions of inquiry are still a useful tool for achieving justice and accountability? Or do you think, as the opposition does, that commissions of inquiry are merely a waste of public resources? Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and we might just be back to have another conversation like this.